Tony, are you there?
I am here. Do you hear me loud and clear?
I hear you loud and clear. I can't tell you how excited I am to speak with you. It has been since LA Film Festival 2007 and Severed Ways since we last spoke.
No way. Okay, it's coming back to me. Yes, of course. Okay.
Yes.
Amazing. Okay, so you've seen the trajectory.
I have seen the trajectory. I mean, Severed Ways, I championed that film. That was part of my opening day must-see festival films. You ended up with a Best Narrative Feature nomination. I still maintain to this day that Nathan should have had a Best Cinematography acknowledgement. And seeing Ted K has borne out everything I saw in you in 2007.
Oh, thank you. That means so much. That really means a lot. Thank you for that.
Tony, this is... You blew my mind. I watched this yesterday, so it'd be fresh in my mind to talk to you today. And I have to tell you, this is chilling. It is visually arresting. Yet there's an intimacy. This really comes down as a masterful look into the mind of a madman and a genius. Which is he? You set up both schools of thought, and you do that not only through Charlotte's performance, but once again with Nathan's cinematography, which is I am just so gaga over the cinematography that Nathan and Ethan did on this one. You're using all the tools in the toolbox again. With lighting, with saturation, with dissolves, with horizontal swipes, vertical swipes, 360s. The 360s are incredible because we're taken into the frenzy of Ted's mind. And then you're editing. And then, the slow-mo with bombings is just mind-boggling. And you punctuate all of this with music that has classical, operatic, this is an amazing film, Tony. I am so thrilled to be here all these years later and see your growth as a filmmaker.
That is very cool. Thank you so much for that. And you're using all the words how I describe it, the whole arsenal of cinema. I was just talking about that with somebody else. And you're picking up on everything I'd hope somebody would pick up on. So thank you for that.
Where did you, now granted, I know you shot on the Unabomber's homeland, shall we say. It's not the same as the woods in New Jersey or back east where you shot Severed Ways and where you grew up.
Vermont, yeah.
But still, you have that vibe with nature that really comes through so strongly here. And in that regard, it doesn't surprise me that you would tell this story about Kaczynski. That doesn't surprise me because of your own connection to quote unquote nature and Mother Earth and your appreciation for it. So that doesn't surprise me that you would tell this story. But what was it that made you want to sit down, work with your co-writers, and come up with this and use Kaczynski's own words in voiceover to really give us context?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it really, it comes from my own connection to spending a lot of time off the grid, and, it's actually, I edited Severed Ways, living off the grid, where we filmed the movie, and then actually wrote the script in that same place, in Vermont where we filmed. So, I think knowing nature and just really being interested in somebody who lived off the grid with no running water or electricity could do sort of so much damage and control, the country and paralyze, it, have airports shut down, and and pull off this this stunt, this incredible stunt to get his words published in the New York Times. I mean, it was just such a feat, and it was just one of those stories where you kind of get at a surface level, and then you keep digging, and it just becomes more and more fascinating. And it's not something, serial killers is not something I'm usually into. And in a way, he's not really a serial killer because it's based off more of a political ideology, although he's also taking revenge against academia because he felt like they had, kind of crossed the line with him at Harvard, where they did psychological interrogation technique studies on him as part of NK Ultra. So it was just so dynamic, and I think my own connection to the natural world, my serious concerns about this climate catastrophe that we're facing that gets worse and worse every year. Interested to sort of that this Mad Men villain, there's aspects of him that you actually could connect and relate, and how just that, that kind of contradiction of where you don't believe in somebody's actions, but you believe in their ideas and ideology, and, what is one person's freedom fighter, what is a terrorist. So it's just such an American tale, and Ted is such a, in a way, this frontiersman, but at the same time, we didn't want to mythologize him at all,
Right.
Like that's what I feel like the film is very honest, and it also uses Ted's writings that were extremely honest. So, I feel like this really is the spectrum of Ted, and I kind of approached Ted as if I was a documentarian, and I really wanted to get like a full balanced look at him. And my previous film, Peter the Farm, with an alcoholic farmer who's sort of, life is beautiful and terrible, just wanted to get to the essence of these sort of violent male archetypes. And, I feel like, the movie, it just sort of allows the viewer to kind of decide for themselves who they think this person is, too. Because I just feel like there's so many morality plays right now in cinematic storytelling that's just a little tiresome and sort of lacks respect for the audience.
Mm-hmm. Well, you did an amazing job of laying this out. So I'm curious, at what point, how long did it take you research-wise to go through all of his writings, to break this into what you would show, what you didn't show, and once you figured that out, how you would visually and sonically bring this to life? And if I'm not mistaken, you're relying on a lot of, you and Nathan and Ethan are relying on a lot of natural sunlight and natural look again.
Yes, we are, and then also at times, kind of trying to get theatrical with some of, the stuff, So it's also, very interested in realism, but realism can also get extremely dry and boring, So that's where we really wanted to, kind of dive into the fantasy world and telling the story visually, so that, you can kind of connect the dots however you want, because I feel like that way allows the audience to become an active participant, right? So, I think, it just. So, what was the first part of your question? So, I guess talking about like the process of coming up with the story. I mean, since it was a long journey, things changed along the way. There was the first deep dive into, researching, reading every book we could, but this was 10 years ago. And then creating an outline that became the film, based on, a lot of the stuff that is usually left out, So I'm very interested in the rural machinery, from the skidders, from the sounds, and, know what it's like to interact with, ATVs or motorcycles on a trail. And, I don't have that kind of, extremely negative reaction to that, but I understand how it could bother you, and if you're in rural America, there's machine sounds or gunshots. It's, there's some noise pollution that can easily get on your nerves. So anyway, just coming from a point of view of stuff that's usually left out in, a story like, the Kaczynski tale, and thinking it's actually interesting. But, then we got, access to a lot more of the archives, and then so that was a whole nother layer that then got interpreted in the story. And then actually going out to Lincoln, where we filmed the movie on like you said on his actual land, talking to the people there. So some of those stories came from getting to know the amazing people in Lincoln, Montana, and their version of events. So it was just an ongoing process, and even to the bitter end, we were still finding stuff in the archives that we were trying to film up to the very last minute. And, working with Charlton was so incredible because he was, one of these rare actors that was down to come back 4 times. So we shot over, a whole year in 4 different seasons. And Charlton had the beard, and he was just that committed to the role. And it's almost kind of unheard of, based on actors' schedules, based on just their commitment to the work to do that. So as we take a break between shoots, we find more stuff, and then we shoot again, be like, oh, we found this, and because we were also shooting in the actual location, every day we might find a new artifact that then we'd want to, let's say, create a scene around. And for instance, when Charlton is, watering his garden, that hose was just sitting in the brook.
Wow.
And we knew from his writings that he would talk about irrigating his garden. So we, just filmed Charlton figuring out how to get the water to his garden, which was his actual garden as well, and then use that scene as kind of a metaphor for, everything else that's going on. So, things like that would just sort of, the serendipity would happen from being at the place and would just affect us. And, you kind of realize how idealistic it was, but also how close he was to town. People think he was, extremely remote, but no, he was, a bike ride from the little town of Lincoln. And, over the years, there was encroachment that bothered him, but in a way, he was the worst neighbor to have, It felt for everybody that had to interact with him. And also, they had no idea until he was arrested that he was the one doing all these things, So, only it was local lore about chopping down the telephone pole, and that didn't come out until, his diaries, some of his diaries excerpts were released by the FBI. People in Lincoln kind of loved that we were putting that in the film, and actually the line crew helped us run all those telephone poles. We actually chopped those down, but they helped us set that up, and we're excited we're doing the scene. And, so, a lot of it was just, kind of approaching it like a documentary and, and having this kind of recreation kind of, aspect to it.
I have to say, so you and your production designers, Kate and Andre, you actually rebuilt the cabin there.
So I I kind of bounce back between filmmaking and building. I built the cabin in, I think it was about 2014, and did some tests. And I built the cabin in pieces so it could be loaded up into a truck so it would be all ready to go when the time was to film. And, it took a little longer than I wanted to, find the right actor, fundraise, all sorts of things. But then as soon as, we secured the land in Montana, we just loaded the cabin in the truck and brought it out there and put it together in pieces. And then, Audrey and Kate, just, incredible job, set decorating. Obviously, we turned the cabin over in that scene. I had to do that, 7 or 8 times, and rubberized props and all sorts of things. So, it was just, it was, it was just a very great team. I mean, it was, a small team, of course, so that we could be there for a longer time, and I kind of, we sort of would rather have a smaller crew, and so we could have a lot more days, so that was really important. So everybody that worked on the film, really cared and put their all into it, and were very talented. So, super lucky, because it does not always happen.
No, it doesn't. Well, I have to commend Kate and Audrey on the root cellar. I was really impressed with the root cellar. I thought that was great. But now once as you're building this, were you and Nathan and Ethan, were you guys shot listing? Were you storyboarding? Were you shooting on the fly and going with the flow of the day? How did you craft the visual tonal bandwidth, the visual construct itself? Because you've got close-ups, you've got mids, you've got wides that are so necessary for really establishing the anger, the upset, the conflict within Kaczynski, and to give us an idea too of what's happening. So I'm curious what you guys did to develop your the grammar, the visual grammar?
Yeah, that's a good question. Some of it was definitely shot listed, and just thinking, there were moments where you wanted to be very structural and concise, and then there were moments that were, very loose, and that's what was required. So, I always like kind of having an idea of how you want to shoot it with the option to, throw it out later. So kind of like an actor, learn your lines so you can forget them, So, it really, the film is so psychological too, So and there's sort of this absurdist level to it all, that it was. It's always trying to find the right balance, and I think working with Nathan for all these years, stuff is just sort of instinctual between us, and we know how to. This scene is about this and that. I think it would be really interesting to shoot it this way, and it's a lot of ideas like that. So it's not, stuff is rarely sketched out, it's more descriptive. And then, when you're in the location, it lines up with, what we were talking about, description and lensing, So, definitely a big thing of wanting to have grit, wanting to have it be, textual, like you were saying earlier, sort of saturated. So, you're kind of on this journey, this trip with Ted, and you just really wanted to be in the elements as much as possible, and that's why, those, it's these, kind of epic landscape shots, but then mixed with these very claustrophobic, scenes with, other people, how it would feel for him to kind of finally talk to somebody, that tension. So, each scene always feels like it has its own rules, and, if you kind of, have the time, you can, figure out how to, shoot it correctly. So it's always that kind of approach.
Well, and I love the approach, and then the effects that you throw in with it, the dissolves, the swipes, the slow mo. But I love it because what it also does in vacillating your shots is that you have us thinking, especially with the whole phone company and the phone in the phone booth in 360 degrees, spinning that camera round and round. You have us wondering, are we the ones who are crazy? Is this the hyperized state of Kaczynski? Or is he the normal one and we are the ones who aren't aware of reality? And you really convey that. All those thoughts run through your mind as you watch this. And that is a testament to you as a storyteller, because it's not filmmaking confusion. This is very deliberate. It makes us think. And I am just so thrilled to see that from you, Tony. So thrilled.
Thank you.
The other big thing with this film is your sound, is your scoring, the musical selections that you have, the kind of score, and then the sound design as a whole, because the sound is so important given Kaczynski's dislike of mechanization and sounds of modern man. It's very important in this film, and the fact that you mute explosions and hypersaturate other sounds is fascinating to me structurally. Talk to me about what you were doing musically and through the sound design and mix itself to come up with this sonic palette.
Yeah, a few things. Let's, like I was saying, Ted's is frontiers. So in a way, this story is sort of like a psychedelic twisted Western, So that's kind of starting off with that, intro with the snowmobiles, in a way is sort of mechanized, Leone kind of vibe, That's why I just love that song that Blake Mass had created, and that was one of the first songs he'd given me, and he just came up with that motif, and it just clicked, where it was kind of like this cavalry coming in, working with the composer Blake Mass was just was an amazing experience. And we just were, hit eye to eye, and some stuff, was instantly worked, and other stuff we try a bunch of versions, and sometimes I tweak some little things and stretch some things out. So, very cool collaborative process with him. And then, sonically, really wanted to put it in overdrive of how Ted was hearing it, because when something bothers you, you really do pick up on it. You become obsessive, so that obsessive quality that Ted would have had to, eliminate the sound of a sawmill or just hear it in a way that, other people just tune out, and like you're saying, like, are we insane or is he insane? Or, what if you do hear it that way? Maybe this is insane. How do we put up with this? So, these ideas that, are we seeing clearly right now, with everything that's going on? And then, certain times I wanted to stylize, some of the bombing and violence, so you kind of would step out and it would actually be more impactful because you would be slightly removed, so when the bomb goes off where he's walking away, that first bomb in the computer store, it's silent, it's just the music, and you just sort of go inward and, you kind of process it, in your own way, and it's a little more despicable, as opposed to kind of being in the middle of the action. So, each scene, once again, kind of just like constructing this whole balance through the film of, when you want to be removed, when you want to be involved in it, when you want to see it through his eyes, when you want to be slightly detached, and that's where, the editing process took a while. It's really this, very delicate balancing act to get right. And, one scene a little off could really, mess up the next 5-10 minutes or the last 10 minutes you just watched. So, that's why I'm just amazed by the power of sound and visuals, consistently going through it. I mean, it really is this delicate, process.
Gotta ask you, Tony, since I was there at the start of your journey, and I'm here now, and even more in love with your work and your growth as a filmmaker, what would you say for yourself as a filmmaker? What were the lessons that you learned as a director, as a storyteller with making Ted K that you will now take forward into future films?
That is interesting. I mean, it was quite a process, and once again, we, made the film over an entire year, which is super lucky. In a way, this might sound boring, but it really is important because I just think we've gotten so far away from it, the way the system makes movies. It's just, if you have time and you have good people, and even if that involves a small crew, that literally is the most important thing, because it allows you to really do what you want, and even with limited means, you can make the film how you want to make it, and that's just sort of, I think this experience just once again made that clear to me, but. I think just, I like to make movies that are, immersive, and trying to find people that are very, interested in doing that too. And I'm very lucky to find Charlton and just hope to work with other actors like that. But, each film is a learning experience, and each film should challenge the director too. Like, the last thing I want to do is, keep repeating myself and things like that. So, each film has its own rules. And see what the next film, requires for us to do.
Very quickly, did it occur to you, did you ever think about trying to get access to Kaczynski in prison and talk to him directly?
Not so much, because once again, just wanted to be more objective, and he wrote everything down. So I handled that, and just felt like having a little distance would be helpful. And, and that's where I feel like we kind of crafted balance of being scholarly about Ted, really kind of, feel like we presented who this guy it was,
Tony, job so well done. I can't wait to see what you do next. I hope it's not another 14 years before a narrative again. But if it is, I want to talk to you.
Okay, sounds good. We'll talk much sooner than that, I promise.
Thanks so much, Tony. Bye-bye.
All right, great. All right, talk to you later.